Hi, Dr. Lillian Lewis here. Um, so before we get started talking about your Learning Community Visual Journal, I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever kept a diary? Maybe you kept a diary at home to record your personal thoughts. Maybe you kept a diary in school to chronicle different learning or to reflect on a certain subject matter. Either way, if you've kept a diary before, you know a little bit about what you need to know for your critical task assignment. So, your critical task assignment is called the Learning Community Visual Journal. A visual journal is very much like a diary. It is an ongoing reflection. And in a diary, very often we just use text to reflect. So we may be thinking about our day, we may be thinking about a certain prompt or subject, but in any case, a diary is a place where we generally just write or journal. So you may have done journaling before. You may have done that in K-12, and you may have done it in college. So if you've done that before, you're familiar with this idea of this ongoing process of reflection, but you're probably familiar with it as a text-only document. Visual journaling, on the other hand, utilizes both images and text. And some visual journals use hand-rendered images. So these are two-dimensional images that are either drawn or painted or created using collage techniques or printmaking. There's lots of different ways that you can create two-dimensional images for visual journaling. And there are some examples of visual journals that use hand-rendered images in your critical task assignment folder on Blackboard. There are also some examples of visual journaling that use photo documentation. So if you're familiar with Reggio Emilia, early childhood teaching, you know that a big part of Reggio Emilia method is photo documentation. And so a big part of what the educators do in Reggio Emilia classrooms is to document student work. And this is partly accomplished through collecting student examples, but also is accomplished through video recordings and through photo documentation. So taking photos of student work is already integral to what we do as early childhood educators. And not just in Reggio methods. In traditional K-12 classrooms in public school, photo documentation and video documentation is becoming increasingly important in terms of gathering student portfolio data. So as we develop portfolios of student work, photos and videos are a big part of what we do there. We also take photos of ourselves and videos of ourselves as teachers, kind of like what I'm doing right now. So thinking through images is an important part of what we do in early childhood education. And increasingly, we are finding that we get more information about our teaching and more information about teaching in general and understanding ways that serve students best through using rich documentation. And so that is the spirit of what we're doing with the Learning Community Visual Journal. Your Learning Community Visual Journal will consist of 15 unique reflections. The 15 unique reflections for the online course will be a result of you taking field notes or observational notes of specific videos that are in the critical task playlist. So there's a critical task playlist on the class YouTube channel, and you'll need to watch the videos specific in that playlist. So I don't want you to go to YouTube and just look for any teaching video. I want you to look at the specific videos in the critical task playlist on the class YouTube channel. And if you haven't already had a chance to watch the critical task field notes video, please also watch the critical task field notes video before you start watching the playlist, because this will give you a better idea of how to take observational notes of what you're seeing in the classroom and how to incorporate the weekly prompts. That brings me to our next point. So you're going to have a playlist, you're going to do observations, and you're going to take notes. We know that much, right? So watching videos, and if you're taking this class in a face-to-face format, you would be observing in an early childhood classroom setting. So you're going to go out into the field and actually observe a classroom. But in either case, you can gather great data, whether it's through watching videos or observing in a live classroom. Both of those are going to provide you with really rich information if you take good notes. So we know we're observing, taking notes, and then what do we do with that? So after that, you're going to be reflecting on these weekly prompts. So each week, I'm going to give you 3 prompts to choose from. Again, for the summer course, this is a 6-week course. So if you'll do 2 to 3 reflections each week, then you'll be on track to have enough reflections by the end of the semester for your learning community visual journal. So your learning community visual journal is not just going to be looking at the teacher and the students. It's also going to be looking at the classroom and other information. So some of the videos you're going to be watching incorporate classroom volunteers and things like that. And you're going to have different prompts to choose from. So it's important that in your visual journal, you let me know using images or text or both that this is a week 1 reflection, week 2 reflection, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then you're going to make it clear which prompt you're responding to. So you have 3 prompts each week to respond to. You don't have to use all 3. You don't have to do 3 reflections each week. The math doesn't work out. If you did 3 reflections each week, you would end up with 18 reflections. You only need 15 for the assignment. So some weeks you may choose to do 2, other weeks you may choose to do 3. My personal advice to you is do more of them early on, so you leave yourself some openness in your schedule later in the semester rather than waiting and doing a whole bunch at the end. So again, that's my recommendation. You get to choose how many per week you want to do. You can either do 2 or do 3. It's up to you. But you're going to look at the prompts and look at those in relation to your observational data. And then if you've watched that video, you know there's another column where you are writing what your observations make you think. And then you're going to want to kind of write some notes there to help you connect your readings and your own experiences and your knowledge of early childhood development, your knowledge of arts integration, your knowledge of cross-disciplinary lesson planning, your knowledge of intervention strategies, how to do modifications or adaptations or to create accommodations for students with special needs. And you're going to write some things in that column that reflect on those items. And you're also going to think about how your observations connect to the prompt. Then, once you've done all that for your observational notes, you're going to use those observational notes to build a visual reflection. So your visual reflection is going to reflect on aspects of students, teaching, learning, the lesson cycle. There are different topics, but in any case, your aim is to kind of cover a broad span of experiences and ideas. So you can either use images that you pulled from the YouTube video or images that you pulled from the web through search. Or you can create your own images digitally. I'm going to put some links to some free software where you can create images using free software on your computer or your mobile device. So there's lots of software that you can edit photos or you can create original images. You can do some digital drawing. If you want to try to do some digital drawing or you want to do some digital collaging, you're certainly welcome to create all of your visual reflections as digital pieces. So you're incorporating images and text, and that can either be done on paper or it can be done on the internet. So the choice is yours. If you want to do a combination of both, that's fine too. Again, I'm also going to link a playlist of different media or different materials that you can use for your paper-based reflections. So if you want to hand draw things or paint or cut things out to do some collaging, you're certainly welcome to do that as well. Visual journals tend to be physical. They tend to be done in hard copy. But over the last several years, I have moved in my own practice to thinking about digital reflections. So you're already familiar with the formats of blogs, and you're already familiar with things like Pinterest, which teachers often use in a pinch to gather ideas and to organize ideas. You're probably also familiar with things like Instagram or YouTube. And since we have a class YouTube, I'm hoping that you're becoming more familiar with not only being a content consumer, but a content producer. And part of content production in the scope of education is to use digital media as a method for reflection and growth. So, as we think about professional development, part of how we can develop professionally is to think deeply using digital tools. And one of the ways we can think deeply using digital tools is to create digital visual journals. So, you'll see some examples of digital visual journals in the folder for your critical task. There's also the official description of the critical task. There's a rubric to help guide you in how I'm going to assess your critical task. This is the same rubric that you're going to see on TaskStream. So when you go to turn in your critical task assignment and you have all 15 of your files and they're in a Microsoft Word format or PDF format, and you upload those to TaskStream on Wednesday, June 24th, which is your due date for this assignment. When you turn this in on Wednesday, June 24th, and again, Wednesday, June 24th is the due date for you if you're taking this class in summer 2020. If you're taking this class later, you're going to have a different due date. Please refer to your due date on your syllabus and in the folder if you're taking this at a different time. But in any case, when you upload that, you're also going to see the exact same rubric on TaskStream, and that's the rubric I'm going to use to assess your work. So you've got a rubric, you've got examples of visual journals, you've got examples of media, you've got prompts that you're going to use for each week. So I'm going to label them week 1, week 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You're going to have those weekly prompts. And then there's a playlist for you to follow on our class YouTube. So that pretty well sums it up. I think that covers the main things that we need to think about for a visual journal. Hopefully you have a better idea of what that looks like after you've spent some time reviewing the materials. You've had a chance to try your hand at some of the observational notes, and you've had a chance to look at some of the supplemental videos I've linked as well to show media and to show other examples of visual journaling. So I think that's about it. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of data that you're able to collect from these videos, and I'm really excited to see how you respond to the prompts, and I'm honestly really excited to see your journaling. There are so many different ways that we can solve this problem. One of the main things I really want you to think about is this notion of intertextuality and the idea that images and text can combine to add additional context. So an image by itself has some substance and meaning. Text by itself has some substance and meaning, but when we use both of those, when we juxtapose those together, and they're in relation to each other, we add layers and layers and layers of possibilities and ways we can interpret this and ways we can engage those things. So again, as you're looking at the examples, look for ways that the image and text lend meaning to each other and they add substance to what you're looking at. And think about your own visual journaling from that standpoint. So again, that's about it. I think I've covered the basics. If you have specific questions, of course, you can always check in with me during office time online in Blackboard on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. So I look forward to seeing your work soon, and best wishes in your observations and your visual journals.